Hello, welcome to the next installment of our going through the Torah, the freestyle Torah series, where we go through the verses and whatever we come up with, we're going to speak out any ideas which I've seen before or I remember. Okay, so we are in the second part of Pashas Lech Lecha, which is the third of the Pashas of the Torah. There's 54 altogether, 12 in Genesis. And so we take it from chapter 15. So just after the war of the four kings and the five kings, God appears to Avraham in a prophetic vision. He says, "Don't worry, Anochi mogen loch, I will protect you." You can look at Rashi yourself here if you want. I recommend you pause the video because I'm going to try going through it a bit quicker and assuming that you can see basically what either if you know Rashi yourself, you read the Hebrew, or you need to read the English, right? So Avraham was worried that he got massive merits from the miracles which happened in the War of the Four Kings, Five Kings, like we spoke last time. So he's saying to Avraham, Avraham was worried that he lost some of his merits, he might get punished for some of the people he killed. And Hashem says, don't worry, you're not going to get punished, you did the right thing, and you got immense reward still for your actions. Don't worry about it. You will not lose any of your place in the world to come because you receive some of your reward here. Don't worry about it. And just remember, we mentioned this name here, Anochi mogen loch. I'm a shield for you. We spoke about this. It means the idea of mogen means something for free, right? Magon, right? God's telling Avraham, I'm going to be a shield for you. That means a protector, right? You find in the Shemona Esrei, we have four names describing God in the end of the first blessing of the standing Shemona Esrei tefillah. Melech Oizer Moshiach Mogen. Each one's going from a lower level protection to a higher one. Melech is someone you recognize God as the king, and in that merit, God protects you. Melech Oizer, that's someone, a helper. You help someone who can more or less stand by himself, but he can't quite do it, so you help him along. Moshiach means a savior. That means someone who's in trouble and he needs saving, right? That means I can't do any of it myself. You just have to get me out of this situation. It's not good enough just to help me, yeah, and rely on the other part of the salvation for me to do. You have to do the full saving yourself. And then the fourth level is mogen. That means the person's not even aware he needs saving in the first place, and God just protects him without any input, no prayer, nothing, right? Just mogen, I'll protect you, right? A shield. Yeah, I guess it's the difference between the person gets hit by an arrow and he needs to remove the arrow and heal up, but mogen stops him getting damaged in the first place. So this is the sort of relationship God has with Avraham, is the one of total protection, right? Because the way that Avraham served Hashem was totally selflessly. He was willing to give up his life. So God says, fine, I'll do everything for you. I'll protect you. You don't have to do don't lift a finger anymore, because your protection from me and your relationship with me is not contingent on any actions anymore. You've proved yourself, right? Of course, there are going to be other tests coming up, but essentially, this is the relationship I want to have with you, Avraham. Hashem says, measure for measure. You acted with me with chesed, with total, boundless kindness, doing things which you didn't need to do, right? So I'm going to do the same with you. I'm going to be a shield for you. So therefore, don't worry about it. Your merits are still standing. You're not going to lose them. Okay, and then he says, what are you going to give me, God? Right? I don't have any children, and the teacher, that means my primary student, who teaches my teachings to others in the house is Eliezer, right? And you haven't given me any children, and Eliezer's basically going to inherit me. The problem with this is there's a difference between a son and a servant. They take on the teachings of their father or teacher or master using two different methods. The son feels part of the father, right? Ben krod avuha. It's the idea of the son. He's actually literally an extension of the father. We spoke about a few times about the 10 sephiros, how they correspond to 10 parts of the body. You can group them into three groups. You've got the head, the torso, and the low part of the body. The head is the one which brings the information, the ideals, the ideologies, the concepts, the planning. The middle part of the body, that's chesed, gvura, tiferes, that's the central, the torso and the two arms. They're the ones which actually get on with carrying it. That's who you are. I'm the one who actually carries up the message which has been transmitted to the body from the head through the neck into the body, right? And then you want that message to persist throughout the generations, or to expand beyond my immediate borders, my immediate habitat. So that's what the legs do. They take you outside of your place so you can actually express your thoughts with your body using the legs in another place. So the legs take you to another place. Or the reproductive organ makes children, right? So the children are the continuation into the future of the ideals of the father. So that's the idea of the children are actually like sort of just a natural continuation of the father. However, when you teach someone and you don't have that deep, intimate sort of connection like a father with a son, there's a risk in that, right? You can have a very good pupil, and in fact Eliezer was an incredible student. He learnt so well the teachings of Avraham and implemented them that he was one of the very few people never to die, right? He went to heaven alive, I believe the Medrash says, right? Because he was a total vessel for the teachings of Avraham. He was basically the perfect student, but the problem is those teachings are not permanent. They're forced, right? It took an active choice to accept those teachings and to absorb them and assimilate them into himself, right? So when things get hard, you don't have that fail-safe, that your natural, what's it called, your baseline. Your baseline is not to snap to your teachings, it's to snap to what you were before your teachings, right? Whereas the son, his natural baseline, when things get hard, I'm going back to what did my father teach me, because that's who I am. Whereas the student, he made himself that, and he can make himself very high, but there is that deficiency in terms of how permanent the teachings are. So Avraham was worried. My servant is going to just inherit me, but that would mean my teachings don't go to the end of days, to the end of time, like the Jewish people who are the descendants of Avraham indeed are doing even until today. So he says, don't worry, you won't, you'll get a child basically, and he'll inherit you, so you don't have to worry about that. And he took him outside and he told him to look at the heavens and to count the stars, if you're able to count them, yeah. And he said, this is what your children will be like. Your children will be like the stars. One idea of comparing the Jewish people to the stars is they're numerous, but also, despite the fact that they're numerous, each one's individual. As it says in Psalms chapter 147. God counts a number for the stars. That means there's the number. That means there's a collective. There's groups of stars. To all of them, he gave names. There's a name. We don't know the name of all the trillions of stars, right? It's more than trillions, right? But apparently God has a name for all of them. So even though you've got the nation of the Jewish people, each person is an essential piece of the jigsaw in God's plan for mankind. Right? That's why every Jewish person is essential. Whereas when it comes to the non-Jews, you have a concept of hashgacha klolis. They have to be non-Jews as well. They have to be the vessels to bring out the light which the Jews bring into the world, and they have to bring it into the physical world and be the vessels to absorb that light. But not every non-Jew is necessary for that purpose, right? So you don't have this concept of every non-Jew being absolutely indisposable, right? So that means when non-Jews do get their place in the world to come, it's actually much more of a merit for them, because they didn't have to do it. It wasn't destined that they would be there at the end, right? They have to choose it, which is quite an amazing thing. We spoke about this when we spoke about the Gerim and the converts. It works a bit differently with converts, like we said there, right? Okay, let's carry on, right? And Rashi gives 3 explanations. What do you mean he took him outside? He said either he took him out of his tent, or he took him out of his constellation, his zodiac sign, because he said that Avraham saw that, look, in the zodiac signs are saying, I'm not going to have a son, right? So what are you talking about, God? How can you tell me I'm going to have a son? So it's a bit odd there. What's Avraham doing there, yeah? So God said, you will have a son, right? They can make it dramatic, right? You shall have a son, right? And Avraham says, sorry, says on page 29 of the daily newspaper, sorry, my zodiac sign says no, sorry, you must have got it wrong there. What's he talking about? This is the creator of the universe. So there's a beautiful idea here. Avraham, how did he work out God was in charge of the world? He looked at nature. He was able to see the harmony in nature, the genius of nature. So he understood that nature is actually not something separate from God. It's just an expression of God's action in this world, right? It's a way that God hides himself, but his clothing, just like a person's got a glove on his hand, right? Right? The glove covers over and hides the person's hand, but you can see the person acting through the glove. Yeah? You know there's a hand behind it. Right? Avraham was able to see God working like that. So when he looked at the stars, he understood astrology. And he thought, well, okay, I was born under this star and that. And that's in the east, that's in the west. Oh dear. That means I can't have children. Right? He saw that as God telling him, you, Avraham, will not have children. So then God comes along and he says, no, you will have children, don't worry. So Avraham saying, I don't understand. You just told me I'm not going to have children, and now you're telling me I am going to have children. He didn't see a difference between a prophetic vision, God directly communicating with him, and looking at nature. Because he saw it's all one God. Yeah? It's just God's communicating to me in 2 different languages. In the language of constellations, the language of prophecy. I don't see the difference. So, and God said, yeah, you're right. God didn't tell him the audacity, like saying that not understanding what I'm saying because the zodiac doesn't say that. God understood that's what Avraham was saying. Yeah, and he said, you said good, Avraham. Yeah, because when it says in the stars that you won't have a child, it said Avram ein lo ben. The name Avram, which is his current name, and Sarai, right, and your wife Sarai, won't have children. But I'm going to change your names, and Avraham, with the extra hey there, right, and Sarah, which is with a hey instead of the yud, yeah, they will have children. The idea of the hey we spoke about last time, that the hey is the fifth letter of the alphabet. It's the one which looks like this. You've got the daled, and then you've got the little yud over here, right? It's the idea of the spiritual coming into the physical world. That means if you just got a yud in your name, yes, you're up there in heaven. You're not relevant to this world. If you put a hey in the name, that means you're taking that spiritual element which you have, and you're expressing it into the physical world. Now you can have children. Children, that this physical world is a place where you can have physical children, and they continue your message into the physical world. This idea of the heys in Avraham and Sarah's name, right? And another explanation, Rashi says, a third one, either took him outside of his tent to see the stars, or he took him outside of his constellation, or he took him outside of the world and he told him to look down at the stars, right? So he's saying something even deeper here, right? Not only can we change the muzzle, right, by changing your name, but we can do something even more powerful. We can take you above the stars. That means you can transcend nature itself. Your nation, the nation which will come from you, is going to be a miraculous nation, a nation which lives through miracles, as we showed in the proofs for the proofs for God and the divinity of the Torah series. All three lectures we've given so far are all based on miracles, something which goes outside of the natural laws of nature, either God speaking to the Jewish people directly, right, the whole nation, which is, besides the miraculous fact that God's communicating, it's miraculous that the Jewish people even have a story like that. There's no other nation or no other ideology or religion who has a story which claims in the first place to have a national revelation. It's always to one person or a very small group of people, right? So the laws of nature dictate religions always start with one or a small group of people, but never with a fundamentally different what's it called, foundation narrative, right? Like the Jewish people did. The fact that the Jewish people, we don't really care whether it even happened or not, according to this line of thinking. Yeah, you don't have to even worry about that. The fact that there's a nation in the world which claims to have a national revelation, that itself is miraculous, right? Or anti-Semitism, we showed that on the flip side, on the negative side, that the miraculous persecution of the Jews defies all rules of persecution, right? Usually any nation which gets persecuted by another nation, it's usually because they're in proximity to each other, right? It's over land dispute, or it's over ideology or religion, things like that. And it usually is limited to like one or two examples with each nation throughout time. Whereas the Jewish people have been persecuted for every reason in the book, basically, right? Right. So again, God's saying, you are above the stars. You're above nature itself, right? You can transcend nature, and the Talmud says in Tractate Shabbos. From here we see Ein Mazel Yisrael. There's no muzzle. Muzzle. People say Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov. People think means Mazel Tov. Good luck, right? Doesn't mean that at all. Mazel means the divine flow. God channels all his divine flow, his energy, his for sustenance and abundance and blessing. He always channels it in a way where we can't detect him doing it, in order to preserve free will. So he does it through channels, right? Either through angels, or in the lower world it's through the luminaries, the sun, moon, and the stars, right? Which is where idolatry comes from, where people want to serve the luminaries themselves or the angels themselves without realizing it's just an expression of God is like God wearing the glove, so to speak, and people say, "Oh, thank you, oh glove," right? That's idolatry. Yeah, you say thank you to the, not even to the hand, to the king who's giving you with his hand through the glove, right? That's the whole message of Avraham in the world was to destroy the idols, right? Don't look at the idols. Don't look at this. The world there's two layers, there's two planes. You've got God, and then you've got like a physical dimension which you need to connect through this to God. No, connect to God directly. Yeah, we spoke about this last time, that idolatry and Christianity. Unfortunately, that's the one thing they got very seriously wrong, right? They feel they can't get to God, or they call the Father, only through the Son. That's literally avodah zarah. That's literally idolatry. That's the classic idolatry. It means you're getting to God through an intermediary, right? And you worship the intermediary, right? It's a big mistake. So hopefully any Christians have second thoughts after hearing this, if you understood the depth of what I just said. Right, so that's the idea. A Muslim Israel, the Jewish people can transcend the muzzle. Okay, and he trusted God, right, that he was going to keep his word. And God considered this trust, that he said, "Don't worry, you will have a son, even though it seems naturally you won't have a son, right? I'm going to trust you. Fine, that's what you say. Let's move on to the next topic. I trust you at your word." And God considered this as a tzedakah, as a righteousness from Avraham, right? And Rashi points out because he didn't ask him for a sign. But then there's another promise which God's about to make, and he did ask for a sign. And we're going to see that Avraham got punished for that, right? And he said to him, "I am God who took you out from Ur Kasdim." That's the Ur Kasdim. That's the place where Avraham was born, where he grew up. That's the Ur Kasdim, the fire of Kasdim. Kasdim is Babylon, right? And Ur means the fire, is one meaning because he got thrown into the fire there by Nimrod. We spoke about the last couple of lectures. I took you out of Ur Kasdim and promised to give you this land. And then Avram said, fateful words, Hashem Elokim, Bamo Eda Ki Iroshenu. He said 4 words. How will I know that I will inherit it? He asked for a sign. Avram, you don't need a sign. You're on such a high level of trust in God. Why do you need a sign? And God said, fine, I'll give you a sign, right? And he takes a number of animals, cuts them in 2, except for the birds. The birds he doesn't cut in 2, right? Right? It says Tzipor lo basar. Rashi explains why. Because the birds correspond to the Jewish people, which will not end up being destroyed, whereas the nations of the world as a whole, they will be right. 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 As it says that it's a hint that the non-Jewish nations will be gradually perish, right? That's what happens, and only a few people, the righteous of the nations, will be left. But the Sipor lo Bosor, but the birds will not. The Jewish people work the other direction. Yeah, we go through troubles first, right, and that purifies us. So in the end, we're all there at the end, right? It can be very painful. But the Jewish people, as we said before, they're like pieces in a jigsaw. Every Jew is essential for God's plan. So it's not favoritism so much. It's God's favoring his plan for mankind, right? And yeah, so every Jew has to do his job. So therefore, they all have to be there in the end, being a channel for God's light. Whereas the non-Jews just have to be some there. Some of them have to be there in order to receive the light in the end. That's the righteous of the nations have a place in the world to come. Okay. And right. And then the sun was going down, and a darkness fell on, or sleep fell on Avram, V'hinei behold, emo chashecho gedolo nefeles alov. As all darkness, great darkness fell on him, right? And Rashi points out, and the Medrash says, remembers the Torah of Choshech Shel Goliath, right? So this is basically, he's asking for the land of, I want a sign for the land of Israel. And he's saying, yeah, look, I'm going to make a covenant with you. The bris bein habasorim means the covenant between the pieces of the animals which you cut in half. We're going to see that in the next verse, or next couple of verses, right? But God's saying, yeah, you get the lands of Israel, but they will also be going into 4 exiles. So very interesting. So he said 4 words to ask God a question. Give me a sign that my children are going to inherit the land. And it seems that he says, well, they will, but you're going to have 4 exiles now, right? And in fact, it carries on with this number 4, right? And Avraham said, and God said to Avraham, you will know, right? But you just asked the question, but more Eidah, through what will I know? Or how will I know? Pama means with what, okay? But more Eidah will I know, Ta'as, knowledge. And Hashem says, Yodora Teda, you want to know? You will surely know. You'll jolly well know. Yeah, and I'll give you a sign, because your seed, your descendants will be strangers in a land which is not theirs. Va'avodum, and not only that, they will serve them v'inuosam, and they will even afflict them. Arba me'es shana, 400 years. Right, so again, 400, 100 for each of the words he said, which he shouldn't have said. Right? Right? And the nation which subjugates the Jewish people, I will judge them and punish them for any evil they did, which is what happened in the time of when the Jewish people went out of Egypt, the Exodus, right? God punished them severely, and they'll go out with great wealth, right? Rashi said, but Mom and God will speak about that when we get to that verse, some deep ideas. What is the importance of this wealth that the Jewish people took out of Egypt? You notice, why doesn't the verse say, Ve'es hagoy asher yavodu, and the nation which they will serve, referring to Egypt, I will judge. Why say, and also, I will also judge Egypt. Also, besides what? There's something else? So yeah, the gum, also the Rabbi Stal's Malchus, to include the 4 exiles, the 4 kingdoms which subjugate the Jewish people: Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome, which is Christianity, right? So and said, don't worry, I'm going to make sure I destroy them as well, because they persecuted the Jewish people. Okay. Right, but you will not see any of this. Yeah, this will all be after you die, and you will go to your fathers in peace. You'll be buried with a good old age. Right? Rashi says, what's a good old age? Because Yishmael will actually repent in the days of Avraham, right? And Esau, his grandson, will not yet become an evil person who won't go out. So therefore, when Avraham died, Yishmael, who started off bad, will end up being good, and Esau, who will end up being bad, was not bad yet. So so Avraham will die happy, basically. The Dor Ravi'i Yeshuvu Heina, and the 4th generation after this exile in Egypt and the persecution, they will come back, but not yet, because God says, I'm totally fair. The nations who currently inhabit the land, it belongs to them, and they don't deserve to be punished and exiled from the land yet, because they have merits, right? Only once they've used up all their merits, then God says, then I'll punish them all in one go, just destroy them, which is what happened when the time of Joshua, when they came into the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, and they conquered it, right? Or even time of Moshe on the east side of the Jordan River, right? But only after 4 generations. Obviously, God knows exactly the calculation when these 7 Canaanite nations will run out, right? So it's interesting. We notice a very interesting juxtaposition here, right? When it speaks about the exile, it says that you will be your descendants will be exiled and slaves in a place in Egypt, basically for 400 years. But when they return, it doesn't say, and after 400 years they will return here. It says the 4th generation will return here. What's the idea? Very interesting. Right, this is a beautiful idea. I'll just say it very quickly. There's a difference between man and time. Right? We talk about the number 4. You're talking about the 4. This number 4 has repeated itself so many times in this paragraph. Idea 4 is the expansion of the physical world. So 400 years represents the totality of a period of time in the physical world, right? That's what exile is. Exile is when you're stuck in time, right? You're bound by time. Time is the physical world. It's the world of suffering. Yeah, suffering depends on time. Exile depends on time. Time means you're changing from one state of being to a different state of being. That means it implies there is suffering. Suffering means a lack of perfection, right? So if there's change, so let's say you got 2 points in time. Right? It's a deep idea here. The Maharal speaks about this. You got 2 points in time. One of them, you have to be not perfect. Because if you're perfect in this point in time, and in this point in time, so therefore, and you're going from this point to that point, there's no change. Right? If there's no change, there's no time. Time means a change in physical state. So therefore, it has to be, time implies that a moment before I was imperfect, and only then I became perfect. Or it could be the other way around, start perfect and then becomes imperfect. But usually what happens is you start from a state of imperfection and you're climbing, you're growing to become in a more perfected whole state. So the idea of time is the idea of the physical world, which is bound by time. The idea of generations is the idea of the human soul. That transcends time. In the world to come, time doesn't work like that anymore. We transcend time. So when the Jewish people got the Geula, the redemption, it's described as the 4th generation. Generation meaning the timeline of people as opposed to years, right? That's the idea. So I hope you understood. I hope I explained it well enough, but I don't want to go into that too long, right? And the sun was going down, and it was dark, and there was a burning oven and a torch which passed between these halves of the animals, and that's a representative of God using his messenger being the fire to go in between the two halves. Right? You could look at Rashi. Maybe don't look at Rashi. It's not very pleasant what this all signifies. Right? Okay. Right. And that day God made a promise with Avraham. Right? He made a covenant, a bris. The word bris, by the way, bris milah, or bris generally meaning a covenant. You have two opposites, and there's no connection between them. A bris is when you have a new reality, a new entity called the connection between the two sides. That's called bris. Bris is from loosely connected with the word bria, which means to create. You're creating something new. Remember what we spoke about the word Beria and Asio in Genesis chapter 1, right? Beria means creating ex nihilo, right? Something from nothing. It's something completely new. Whereas Asio, doing, or Yetzirah, forming, you're taking what's there already and you're reforming it. So the idea of a bris is these two entities were absolutely two separate entities beforehand. A bris creates a connection between them, and a new connection which wasn't there before. That's the idea of bris. Bris Milah, the circumcision covenant, right, as well, it works like that. We'll speak about that hopefully soon. Right, he made a covenant and he says, I've given this land to Avraham from the river to the sea. Right, it's actually from the river to the river of Egypt, right? That's the River Nile, as the southwest corner of the land of Israel, Adon Nahar Godon Nahar Pros, and it's not the other river either, right? So people, the protests now, they say from the river to the sea, referring to the Mediterranean Sea on the west side of Israel, and the river being the river Jordan, right? God promised to Avraham the land of Israel all the way from Egypt, so it's the whole Sinai desert, until part of Sharm el-Sheikh, I think, would be part of Israel according to that, because I think it's on the other side of the Nile. It's on the northern side of the Nile, right? Until Nahar Pros, which is the Euphrates River, right? So it's all the way in Iraq. So really, in the future, the land of Israel was going to be very, very big. It's going to be halfway into Iraq on one side, and it's going to be the part of Egypt even. Right, and he promised him the land of the 10 nations: Keni, Kenizian, Kadmoni, Chiti, Prizi, Rephoim, Amori, Kenani, Girgoshi, and Yevusi. Right, and Rashi points out there's 10 nations here, but we know when they went into the land of Israel, they only got 7. Who are these other 3 nations? They're Edom, Moav, and Ammon. Edom is referring to Edom, was one of the names of Esau, so it's connected with Rome somehow. It's the precursor of Rome, right? Moav and Ammon, these are the nations which were to the south of Israel and to the east of Israel. They will also be in the future part of the land of Israel. Okay, that is the end of that chapter. What's the idea of why do we only have 7 nations now and not the whole 10? The idea is that in this world, we're in the world of nature. The world of nature is governed by the number 7. 7 days of the week, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 notes in the musical scale, 7 nations. Right? The Jewish people are meant to have the land of the 7 nations. When Mashiach comes, there'll be a revelation of a higher element of God which has been hidden until now, and then the number 10 will be apparent in the world. That means there'll be 10 colors in the rainbow, so maybe we'll see infrared, ultraviolet. I don't know how it's going to work, right? 10 notes in musical scale. I'm not sure how that will work at all, because it doesn't mean in between notes, right? It means 10 notes as opposed to 7 somehow. Very hard to understand that. Right. I don't think we have 10 days of the week though, but okay. Anyway, but the idea, let's focus on the idea rather than trying to guess what it's going to be practically. The idea is that if you look at the 10 Sephiros, right, there are 3 higher ones, which are called the Moichin, the brains, literally. The 3 higher ones are Keser, Chochmah, Bina, or sometimes we call it Chochmah, Bina, and Da'as, right, the right brain, left brain, and the center, either center at the front or the center at the back. And then you have the 7 Sephiros, the 7 sort of physical attributes, physical Sephiros, to do with attributes, with characteristics, to do with emotions. Chesed, kindness. Gvura, self-control. Tiferes, beauty or balance, or mercy. Netzach is domination. Hoid is subjugation, right? Yesod is foundation. And Malchus is revelation, right? Or kingship. These 7 spheres, when God creates a world in 7 days, He's basically created the physical part of the world. Our job is to bring in those other 3 spiritual elements, which are Chacham bin Das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, right? The whole purpose of this world, remember, God hid Himself from the world when He created the world. He created the world where you can see the 7, but you can't see the higher 3. These higher 3 are the spiritual aspects of the world. The job of mankind is to bring, through doing the Torah and the mitzvahs, to bring those spiritual elements into the world, to bring those 3 into the world, right? The right brain, left brain, and the central, right? And by doing that, God will have then revealed fully His 10 attributes to the world. So this is what's going on here with Avraham, right? Avraham is meant to be getting 10 nations ultimately, right? Which represent the idea of the perfection of this world, where the 7 now becomes 10, right? But until then, we don't have that. We have only the 7 nations, and then Mashiach comes, will eventually get these 10 as well. So let's go into the next chapter. And Sarai didn't have a child, and she had a maidservant who was actually the daughter of Pharaoh, and her name was Hagar. And Sarai said, look, maybe in the merit of me giving you my maidservant as a second wife, or at least as a concubine, right? Maybe in that merit that I will have a child as well, okay? Right? Yeah? Right? And Avram listened to the voice of Sarai, and Rashi said the divine spirit within her, the Ruach HaKodesh which she got, that Sarai was actually a prophetess, so she wasn't just saying it randomly off the top of her head. Right? And Sarai, the wife of Avram, took Hagar Mitzris, which was her maidservant, after 10 years living in the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, right? And after 10 years, if a woman doesn't have children, then according to the strict letter of the law, the man who's got an obligation to have children, and his wife unfortunately is not giving him children, right? She's barren or whatever, he has to take another wife. In the old days it was much easier because you could have a second wife. Nowadays it's much more complicated. And straight away he marries Hagar, and she conceives straight away, and she started looking down on Sarai, right? He said, oh, look at this, Sarai makes it as if she's so righteous. Look, I just went with Avram once, and look, I'm already pregnant, right? And Sarai, 10 years, obviously, she presents herself being so holy and righteous, but really deep down, she's probably not so holy, and that's why she didn't get children. God's punishing her, right? Right, as Rashi says here. And Sarai says, I've got a problem with you, Avram. You're just listening to my disgrace. My maidservant Hagar is treating me lightly now, right? And you're not complaining. You're not sticking up for me. May God judge between me and you. But it actually writes Beini Uveinayich. It adds in a yud here, right? Beini Uveinecha, right? That can be read Beinayich because of the extra yud there, right? So why did it say that? Because Beinayich means between you, feminine. So she was actually talking to Hagar when she said that word. May God judge between me and you, Hagar. And because of that, an evil eye was put on Hagar, and she lost the baby. Right? And Avram said to Sarai, look, okay, fine. My mistake. I should have been worried about your respect more, right? Your disgrace in the eyes of the maidservant. So do what you want with her, right? And Sarai afflicted her. She made her work very hard, and it was too much for Hagar, and she ran away, right? And an angel found her in the desert and told her to go back, and you'll have a child, and he'll be, the nation which will come out from him will be a massive nation, will greatly increase your seed, right? And it will not be able to be counted because there's so much. And we all know who that is. That is Yishmael, which is the father of the Arabs. That's why the Arabs are such a massive population in the world. We see that today clearly. And he says, in fact, you're already pregnant, because obviously before she left, Avram was conceived another child with her, right? And because Shema Yishmael, right? And you should call this child Yishmael. Why Yishmael? Yishma means he will hear, and Kel means God. God will hear. Why Kishma Hashem Elonich? Because God heard your affliction. Right? This could be the reason why the Jewish people have to suffer now. Maybe, I don't know. I heard from Rabbi Mendel Kessen. He mentioned something very strange I never heard before. So I'm just like theorizing what it might mean. He said that that before the Mashiach comes, the nations of the Arabs have to be have to have justice. Apparently, there's something which the Jewish people did against the Arabs, or Yishmael, like ancient complaint which they have against the Jewish people, and the suffering which the Jewish people are going through now has got something to do with sort of like a compensation, sort of rebalancing of the scales of justice. So I was struggling to think, what could that be? So I was thinking maybe the idea of Sarai afflicting Hagar, maybe. Yeah, and you see, as a result of her afflicting, she went out. She got she got sent into the desert, and as a result of that, she got the son Yishmael, who's going to end up afflicting the Jewish people. It could be. It will make sense. The measure for measure, because Sarai sent Yishmael, Hagar out. That caused Hagar to have a child Yishmael, who's going to afflict back to the Jewish people. Very interesting. I don't know. It's just my theory. I'm just struggling with this idea currently. Okay. And what else do we know about Yishmael? V'huye pera Odom. He will be a wild donkey of a man. Actually, that's incorrect, because in Hebrew, the noun and the adjective are the opposite way around. So if you want to say a great man, in Hebrew would be Odom, man, Godel. Odom, Godel, man, a great one. Right? So when you say Pera Odom, he will be a donkey. What type of donkey? A man donkey. And we spoke about this a lot in the Armageddon lecture, that the nature of Yishmael, he's very spiritual. He's actually called Odom, which is a name which is reserved exclusively for the Jewish people. But that's just an adjective to what he is. He's more comparable to an animal called a pera. A pera is a type of animal which breaks through boundaries. It's a wild donkey, wild ass. Right? All the different nations are compared to different animals. Look in the book of Daniel. Right? It's not being derogatory here or anything like that. Yeah, we're trying to describe the essence of the characteristics of this nation. So pera means like a donkey, someone who breaks through boundaries, who doesn't want to be limited by rules, by boundaries. That's why you see, you could just use your your intuition and see that's literally what's going on today. For centuries, the Arabs have generally been, they never had a democracy, right? They always had to have dictators or kings to subjugate the populace, right? Because if they didn't keep them under control, you give them a little bit of freedom, they just break out and cause chaos. But when the geniuses of, obviously it's God's hand, right, the geniuses in America decide to invade Iraq, and you got the Arab Spring and all these different events where they try to bring democracy to the Arab nations, it ends up as a disaster because now, right, we can choose, alright, so how do we do things? We kill each other until someone ends up on top anyway, right? Or we try bringing multiculturalism, we try bringing the Arab mentality into Western nations where things are structured by rules and everyone keeps the rules. But Arabs, their nature is to break down boundaries, is to live free. And therefore, when they come into a country where you're relying on people to keep the rules, all right, let's just not keep the rules, right? They're soft touch to the nations. They don't really punish us badly when we do things wrong. So okay, so we just do what we want. It's good or bad. It doesn't matter. They won't keep the rules. That's just the nature, and we're going to see more of how this prophecy plays out today in these following verses. Right? Pera Odom, he'd be a Pera, but what type of Pera? What type of boundless being? Right? Right? Rashi says Pera Odom, he loves the deserts, to trap beasts, to hunt beasts. Right? What's the idea, by the way, the desert? The desert is a place with no boundaries. That's what the nomads, the Arabs are very happy living. We don't have to be structured in cities or towns. Yeah, we have an infrastructure. We're fine. We don't need anything. Yeah, we're not bound by the physical world, right? And that's why they're so important in ushering the Messianic era. Because they're the ones who show us, don't be dependent on the physical world. This physical world, it's not important, right? Ultimately, we have to get that into our minds and realize that only God's important. Like the Arabs try teaching us every time they speak, it's Allah Akbar. God is great. So they're trying to give us the message. Unfortunately, it can be a bit painful, but sometimes. And look how the verse carries on. In fact, right, he will be Pera Odom. He'll be an Odom type Pera, a man type wild donkey. Yodoi Vakol, his hand will be against everyone. V'yad kol boy, and everyone's hand will be against him. V'apnei chol echov nofal, and he will dwell upon the face of all his brothers. Right? And Rashi says he'll be a listim, he'll be a bandit, he'll be stealing. We don't need to look very far. What happened with the kidnappings of the hostage takings of October the 7th. The idea of the grooming gangs, just taking girls off the street or from foster homes or whatever it is. So, the idea that they take, right? What's the idea of taking? Remember we spoke about in the flood, the idea of breaking down the Tzura Sa'odom, that image of God which is represented in man. The idea of the structure, the form of man, right? And that translates into possessions, the importance of respecting other people's possessions. Because possessions are an extension of this spiritual element, which is man. They said, no, we'll take this. Yeah, everything's a free for all, right? Very similar to the generation of the flood, right? So Yodoviko, his hand will be in everything. He will be a bandit. V'yad kobo, and everyone will be against him. It's amazing. Do you have any nation which has got this characteristic where literally everyone's on edge when they have Arabs coming into their nation? And they're troublemakers. Troublemaker is probably the best word for it. Yeah. So, not talking about specifically Muslims here, we're talking about specifically Arabs. maybe by extension, people who follow the ideology, who are influenced by the Arab mentality, right? Remember, here we're not trying to put anyone down, just have to stress that. This is a characteristic. It's got a good aspect, it's got a bad aspect. Like any characteristics can be twisted in a bad way. We're speaking here about the negative aspect, right? Right? When you intrude on other people's personal space, listim, people are going to hate you. His seed will be very great. There'll be many. That means it'll be a massive nation. In fact, a fifth of the world population is Muslim, or is it Arab? I can't remember. A massive number. Yeah. Just for one nation. Yeah, it's probably the biggest nation on earth, I guess, if you consider Arabs a race. Maybe Chinese or the Indians counted as one as well, maybe. Right, and she said after this revelation from these different angels speaking to her, promising her to have this son Yishmael, right, and tell her to go back, you are the God who sees, right? The God of seeing, right? Because, look, would you have thought that you would see me, that I would see God here after I saw God in my master's house, right? So that's the idea here, right? So obviously, when we speak about seeing God, obviously seeing God's communication, which is through the form of an angel, yeah. As Rashi speaks out here, right? And that she called the name Be'er L'Chayroi, and then she gave birth to the child, and Avraham called the name of the son Yishmael. So, right, even though Avraham, Rashi points out, didn't hear the words of the Malach who told Hagar to call her son Yishmael, he had a divine spirit, Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit, upon him, and he knew that the correct name to call was Yishmael. And he was 86 when this happened. Let's finish off with the circumcision, right? Now, 13 years later, Avraham was 99 years old, and God says to him, Anikel Shakai. It's interesting, the name Shakai, is this the first time we find it? Shakai usually refers to the name of God corresponding to the Sephira of Yesod, and Yesod is a reproductive organ, so I wonder if there's a connection there. Yeah, this name, God wants to reveal this name in the world, right? So it says, Avram, you're the one who's going to do it by doing circumcision, right? And by mirroring your physical place of circumcision is going to reveal my sort of very non-physical spiritual attribute called foundation or yesod, right? Which is the name, which is the Sephira, which actually channels down all the divine energy into Malchus, which is the one which reveals it. The two lower ones work together, Yesod and Malchus. Yesod being foundation, the reproductive organ, and then Malchus being the end of the reproductive organ, which is really where the bris milah takes place. And we spoke about Malchus being the revelation, so I guess an analogy would be a person wants to. We spoke about this in the Lashon Hara lecture, the first one. Is it the first one or the second one? The Kabbalistic angle. I think it might be the second one, actually. The person, let's say, wants to give a present to someone, right? Right? So he gets together, he writes out the check, right? He puts it in the door, right? But the person happens to be on holiday for the next 10 years. So this person's got a check waiting at home, just has to be cashed. But because it's not revealed to him, right? Let's say he worked for the person for a long time. Say, right, okay, I'm going to give you a paycheck with a big bonus, but he's not there to receive it. If it's not revealed to him, then this check is meaningless, right? So if God wants to use his different attributes of wisdom and kindness and justice and mercy, and he wants to bring it into the world, and he wants to do that in one giving, so that he consolidates it all together in what's called Yesod, foundation. Then he has to reveal it. You have to make us aware of that divine flow which is coming to us. That's through Malchus. Malchus is the kingship. Kingship is one which reveals the potential of the nation. That's what Melech is. Someone who unifies things together and reveals. Right? Corresponds to two Mashiachs, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, by the way. One's corresponding to Yesod, one's corresponding to Malchus. Maybe if this series keeps going all the way to chapter 38 in Genesis, hopefully we speak about it there. Right? Anyway, let's just go on a side topic then. Go in front of me and become perfect. What does perfect mean? Right? Be perfect with all my tests, which I'm going to give you, which I still have to give you. And the Medrash says, be perfect in front of me by doing the mitzvah, the commandment of Milah, of the circumcision. Right? Right? And through this you'll be perfect. Because as long as you have the foreskin on you, you are considered imperfect or blemished. Right? Or Hayeh Somim, or you should be perfect. Another meaning of being perfect means now you're missing 5 limbs that you're not in total control of, right? The 2 eyes, the 2 ears, and the Rosh Hashanah, the male organ, right? I'm going to give you an extra letter on your name. That means the Hey. Remember, the Hey is the number 5. So Avraham will be called Avraham, and the numerical value of Avraham is 248, corresponding to the 248 limbs. Okay, according to Jewish tradition, the way you count out certain bones and limbs is 248. It's not the same as the scientific way of doing it. They don't count certain bones as separate. Okay, and certain things which we call limbs are not even bones according to science. Okay, so it's just a different way of working out. The Mishnah in Oholos lists out the full 248. Right. But anyway, according to this Medrash at least, means there's 5 missing, the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, and the male organ. And by having the circumcision, obviously the male organ will be perfected, right? But also that will give Avram control over his eyes and ears, because the eyes and ears are the 2 senses which a person is very vulnerable through, right? It's very hard. You've got to walk around, and if something just pops in front of you, something which is a bad thing to look at, you don't really have control. You can close your eyes quickly, but once you've seen it, you've seen it. Someone says something bad. Oh, it's too late. It went in the ears. It's very hard to have control over the eyes and the ears, right? The mouth, you just don't put the food in your mouth if it's not a good thing to eat. Or smell, you have to be quite close to something to smell it, right? But the eyes and the ears are not in the control of a human being usually. So he gave a promise to Avram, once you have the circumcision, you'll be in control of your eyes and ears, which is an amazing idea. We see in actually the next chapter where Avram saw the 3 angels, he lifted his eyes. He was in control of his eyes. Amazing. Okay. And I'm going to give you a promise, my covenant between you, and I'll make you very multiply, right? It's a measure for measure, because this is the reproductive organ, and this is the one where the energy, God's divine energy, comes into the world through that sephira, through that attribute. Remember, don't start picturing anything physical here, God forbid. But remember, we are created in a physical mapping onto that DNA, that spiritual DNA called the 10 Sephiros, right? There's nothing physical about it at all there. On the contrary, it's the fact that we're human, that we've got a physical manifestation of those abstract ideas, right? Aaron fell on his face, and God spoke to him. the idea is now that he was about to be commanded with the commandment of circumcision, now he became impure. Beforehand, God, there wasn't a commandment of circumcision, so he could have prophecy and be totally fine, be awake. But as soon as he became had the mitzvah, the commandment of removing the foreskin, that means until he did it, he was now in an imperfect state, based on what he should be now. And when God spoke to him, he then collapsed. A beautiful idea I heard once. My covenant will be with you, and you'll be for a big nation, and your name will no longer be called Avram, your name will be called Avraham. Right? Again, because Avram means, look at Rashi here, explains, Avram means Av La'aram, father to Aram, which is where he came from, right? And now you become Av L'chol ha'olam, to the whole world, right? Av Ha'om, yeah? And the race just stays there, so Avraham, right? And Sarai became Sarah as well, right? See the Rashi, interesting Rashi there. Right, so the idea of Abraham getting the letter Hey, he now becomes properly down into this world, like we said before in this lecture. The letter Hey represents the idea of the physical world, right? And because of this, the circumcision, that's a way of connecting the physical to the spiritual. It's a sanctity of the physical. That's what circumcision is all about. It's done on the 8th day of the baby's life, after he's born. Why 8? Because 8 is a number which represents transcending the physical world. Remember we spoke about number 7 and 10 before. So number 7 is representing the physical world. The number 8 is when we transcend it, we go above the physical world. So that's why with the bris milah, we're in the physical world. One of the most physical desires a person has is reproduction, right? Right. So that's a very that part of the body represents an immense physical element of a person. And when we do the circumcision, we say, no, we're not going to have the full pleasure of that. We're going to cut part of it off. The extra bit, which is unnecessary, we're only going to take what's necessary from the physical world. Anything which is superfluous, just for the sake of pleasure itself, we're not going to have. We're only going to have the pleasures of this world, which are necessary. By doing that, we're elevating and connecting to God through the physical. So we're transcending the physical by the circumcision. That's why it's on the 8th day. And then Avraham can have children now, because now they're going to be in that, mindset, if you want to put it more in more human, normal terms. Yeah, because Avram's got the mindset of holiness now in marriage, right? I'm sure he had before, but the physical element wasn't quite there. So I'm going to make a covenant with you and your children, right? And in that merit, I'm going to give them the land of Israel, right? And you keep my covenant. Himolachem kol zachar. All the males should be circumcised. Okay? And on 8 days, that's when it has to happen. And then God tells Avraham, don't call your wife Sarai anymore, call her Sarah. Right? This word Sarai means my princess, as opposed to Sarah, which just means princess, right? Just princess over everyone, right? I will bless her, and I'll have nations which will come out from you, from her. Right? And Avram falls on his face again, and he rejoices, Vayitzchok, and he laughs. That's going to be the name of his son, Yitzchok. And he said, oh wow, 100-year-old man and a 90-year-old woman, who would have thought they would have children, and he was being happy and thanking God for this amazing news, right? But then he said, he said, but please God, I've already got a son though. I don't want you to neglect him. Please let him live in front of you. That means, I wish if you would only just give me Yishmael, I would be grateful. Yeah, this is amazing that you're going to give me another son, Yitzchak. But the truth is, just having Yishmael living in front of you, that means becoming a righteous person, right? Should live in your fear, right? That would be enough for me, right? And God says, yeah, no, still, Sarah, your wife, will have a son, and you'll call his name Yitzchak. And my covenant will be with him, right? Not with Yishmael. But however, Yishmael Shematicha, I've heard what you said about Yishmael. I blessed him, and will increase him ma'od, very, very much. He'll have 12 princes come from him, and make him into a great nation, right? Very interesting. Rashi points out Shnei Masar Nesiim. Nesiim can mean princes. It also mean clouds, right? It didn't say 12 kings. There's 12 princes, right? It's interesting. That's interesting. I wonder if the crown prince says the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. Well, it seems to be he's the one who everyone speaks about, but I'm not sure why the king's not in the picture. I think there's a king of Saudi Arabia. It seems that there's special importance to the princes. Maybe that's a little mini prophecy here, right? But also it's going to be like clouds. They'll disappear like clouds because that's the nature. What's Yishmael like? The Arabs are a very spiritual people, right? And I heard like some of the terrorists, they said, why they think they're going to succeed in the battle between the terrorists, the Palestinian terrorists and the Arab nations against the Jews, because we love life. The Jewish people love life, but they love death. The idea of suicide bombing, that's how they get to heaven. That's how they get to God. They get to God by leaving this world. So therefore, all right, we'll just kill ourselves and kill Chaz v'Shalom, God forbid. As well, they bring the Jewish people with them, and that's how they want to destroy us. Hashem protect us, hopefully, as He promised. But that's the idea. But their whole mentality is connection with God is everything, but to the exclusion of the physical world. Whereas Avraham's message to the world and the Jewish people's message to the world is, no, God created this world. Just like we saw before, Avraham said, look, the star sign saying I'm not going to have a child. That means God saying it. This world is God speaking. You want to die to get to God? No, God's right here with us. He's here and He's also there when we go up. He's everywhere, right? It's just connecting and relating to Him in different forms. So that's why it seems, I would suggest, again, this is my suggestion, interpreting Rashi, the idea of the clouds and the wind, they disappear like clouds, the Arab nations, because that's how they get to their connection with God. They're not a permanent fixture in this world. They're a bridge to the next world, as we spoke about many times. Right, the primary covenant will be with Yitzchak, and God finished speaking with him, and then Avraham circumcised himself, then his son Yishmael, and his whole household, and that is the end of Pashas Lech Lecha. And then we've got to chapter 18, Pashas of Vayera. Here we go, the first word in the Parsha of Vayera, and he appeared. We're going to speak about on the third day of the circumcision when God appeared to Avraham. Okay, right. So we spoke about the idea of the circumcision there, the idea of elevating ourselves onto the spiritual level, and in that merit we get the land of Israel. Who else did circumcision? Yishmael. So Yishmael He's an ancestor of the Arabs, and that's why the only other nation which has been able to settle the land of Israel have been the Arabs. That's why the Arabs managed to settle there for a couple of 100 years, and before the time of the Crusades as well. They were living in the land of Israel, came in and out, right? But when the Jewish people came in mass, was it about 100 years ago or so, then you see the land flourish. Right? What's the difference? The difference is because Yishmael, the Arabs, they only do one of the two parts of the circumcision. Right? The part of the circumcision where they remove the blockage between them and God. That's the foreskin. But there's a second action which we do in the circumcision. It's peeling away a much finer layer of skin as well. And the Jewish people only do that. The Arabs don't do that. Whether they practically do or not, that's not really relevant for what I'm going to speak about here. The idea is that Yishmael has this true connection with God, but we're going to see in the next installment, we're going to see there's something wrong with his faith in God. The faith itself is good, but there's a problem how he uses faith, right? So the faith is a type of faith where I believe in God, but I'm not going to subjugate myself to God's will. I'm going to do what I want and try making that work with God somehow. Whereas the Jewish people, Yitzchak, Isaac, had the full circumcision. That's the idea of removing any blockage between us and God. But on top of that, you're doing this extra one, which represents the idea of holiness, the idea of bringing ourselves up to God, right? That only the Jewish people have, and that's why we merit when the Arabs go, any other nation tried to settle the land of Israel, didn't work. The Arabs tried, they settled it, but it was still quite a barren land, but they managed to survive at least. When the Jewish people come in, they settle the land and it flourishes, right? In fact, there's an idea called someone told me something called the Green Line, where you see where the Jewish people settled, right? You can literally see, like, outside of that place, that town, you see a line of green, where that's where the Jewish people, the Israelis are dwelling in. The Arab towns on the other side of the Green Line, they're in their villages on the other side there, and you can literally see there's a lush greenery, and then suddenly it just stops when it goes outside of the town limits of the Israeli towns. Amazing idea. That ties in with this. What's the idea? What's it got to do with Bris Milah? Why is the land of Israel contingent on different levels of circumcision? Because circumcision is the idea of bringing God into the physical world, sanctifying the physical world and connecting it to God. So therefore the land of Israel is that land where we connect to God through. So therefore if you've got a full circumcision, you can fully connect to God through the land. If you've got half circumcision, there's a small, weaker connection to God. Right? Someone who's not circumcised, then they don't have the connection there at all, and the land is blocked off from having any connection to its divine source, and therefore the stuff won't grow at all. Right? So that's the idea of Bris Milah and the land of Israel. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope it wasn't too controversial for any Christians or Muslims listening to this lecture. I've got to explain the verses as they are according to our tradition. So hopefully you'll see the truth for what it is. And I'm not trying to do any propaganda here or anything like that. If you've got any questions, just leave them in the comments and we can discuss them. All right. Otherwise, I hope to see you in the next lecture. Thanks for listening.